Every guitar player, every musician could become better exponentially every single day of their lives if they asked themselves one question. Am I playing my best? There is a very popular guitar YouTuber. If you've seen this video, if you have even copied some licks from it, it's not your fault. It's got about 28,000 views right now on YouTube as of 3 weeks ago and about 2,100 likes on Instagram. And in the span of about 60 seconds, about 3 or 4 just massive things are wrong. Okay, first of all, when you are playing the intro and you go up to the A minor chord for the first time, he says that it's just out of the A minor blues scale, the pentatonic with a flat 5. Then he proceeds to play the first A minor lick so wrong that it's embarrassing. As Vince Gill one time said, 1 fret makes a hell of a difference. When Jimi played it, the way that he played the lick over the A minor is hammering on the bottom string, the low 6th string, from the 5th fret to the 7th fret. He slides down from the 7th fret like this. He does not slide down through the 6th fret like the mystery YouTuber does. 1 fret makes a hell of a difference. Additionally, Jimi is not using the blues scale at all. 1 fret makes a hell of a difference. When I first saw him playing it wrong, it was about 11 months ago, and I was really hopeful at the time that it was just a plain mistake. We all make them. I've made plenty of them myself. It's not about me, it's not about my ego. Then I noticed a second video, played Little Wing again. Exact same wrong note, exact same wrong spot. I left a very polite comment to try to assist and give some helpful information. Crickets. And not only does it not use the A minor blues scale with the flat 5, the 6th fret of the low E string that he does use, it's a flat 9. Now that's the worst of the bad advice, but it's not where the bad advice stops. He then says, moving up to the B minor chord, which Jimi actually plays like this, is an example of using all kinds of color tones, such as, quote, 9ths and 13ths. Okay, this is like somebody who sort of went to music school, who thinks it sounds like it makes them know what they're talking about, but doesn't really know what they're talking about at all. This is an actual B minor 13 chord. Then the lick he plays over that B minor chord is once more nothing like what Jimi composed. He played this instead. Jimi actually plays. Now I'll give him that Jimi does indeed move through a 9th, technically speaking, on the B minor chord. To give it a visual, the 9th of the B minor chord would be at the 9th fret on the high E string, the very first string, right here. But the way that Jimi does it and the function that it serves in the melodic line up top hardly constitutes a true chord extension or even really being analyzed as a quote-unquote color tone. It's really just a passing tone moving on to a stronger chord tone and then on with the rest of the phrase. Now when he says 13ths, that's flat out wrong, once more embarrassingly wrong. There's no 13th anywhere present when Jimi plays it on the B minor chord. For a visual, now in the YouTuber version, who shall remain nameless, technically if you want to overanalyze it to death, yeah, he moves through that note. It's contained within a double stop that he moves through on a kind of bluesy sounding run. But it's neither the way that Jimi composed Little Wing, nor a responsible way to use your platform, especially if that platform is accessed by a lot of beginning to intermediate level guitarists. Because if you tell someone that he's just using color tones, 9ths and 13ths, and you don't qualify that and you give them the impression that, well, it must be okay then to put a 13th on the B minor chord. You're going to give somebody the impression that if they're reinterpreting Little Wing, let's say you have another guitar player or a keyboard player, and they play a big B minor 13, but you play Jimmy's part. As Bob Wiley says to Dr. Marvin in the film What About Bob? Ow. 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 Dr. Marvin, you can help me. In between the A minor and the B minor, both of which he's gotten wrong, he plays the E minor part and says it's just another example of Jimmy using pentatonics through the chord shapes. Jimmy does this. Now what the YouTube guitar guy played over the E minor chord was kind of noodling, really. And he plays something that looks a lot like an E minor pentatonic scale, as he says, but then pays special attention to the end. What he plays there is an F sharp note during the passage. An F sharp note doesn't even belong in an E minor pentatonic scale. Once more, that's neither what Jimmy played. Jimmy does this, nor proving the point of the YouTube guitar guy at all. What he just played would make the case for E Dorian. The language he's using and the points that he's making don't even line up with what he's playing. So it's like somebody who knows a little bit about theory, but only enough to not realize what they don't know, and then is just passing on, confusing, conflicting, and playing bad advice, and over the A minor part, a really just terrible sounding note to go along with it. The last thing was the caption on the Instagram post, which said, Jimmy knew what he was doing. No, he didn't. I say this as somebody who both adores Jimi Hendrix and cares about that legacy, and as somebody who was pretty formally trained for a large part of my musical life, and early on especially. I learned a lot about music theory, how to read music, not tab, actual music, chord theory, structures, really important stuff. And I keep making the point over and over again that it's good when you're learning to learn how the parts of the car fit together and how it runs. Most of us are not natural-born geniuses, and I wasn't either. But the Jimi Hendrixes of the world, Paul McCartney, Wes Montgomery, there are certain musical minds that just are naturally that gifted. They don't know what they're doing, but what they do is perfect. Jimmy didn't know what he was doing. I don't think Jimmy probably ever thought about music theory a single day in his life. My concern is that by putting that caption there, it makes you look like you know what you're doing to explain what he was doing, but he's explaining it wrong. Now, one last thing in closing, just because it's really cool, and I've never heard anybody else really talk about it other than when you watch the Mix with the Master stuff with Eddie Kramer. But if you listen carefully to that, there's two guitars. They're doubled, even on that beautiful intro. In one speaker is a really clean guitar, and then in the other speaker, it's a slightly dirtier guitar through the Leslie speaker, and it blends into this beautiful image. Thank you for taking your time, your precious time. I don't want to waste anyone's precious time. I'm tired of wasting all my precious time. Okay. Bonus, extra credit if you get the reference. If you know who I'm talking about, if you've seen the video in question, maybe you've been playing Little Wing wrong too, that's okay. It's not your fault, and I still learn things myself every day. The point of this was that if you have a platform, it requires a little bit of responsibility. Out of respect, once more, don't mention anybody by name if you know who I'm talking about, but I do hope that this clarifies things, sets the record straight. If you're enjoying this and you haven't already subscribed, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell, and I'll see you again really soon.